All right, guys, before we get into today's episode, we finally have new Ludwig's Garage merchandise live right now over at ludwigsgarage.com. This collection has been a long time coming, but by far my favorite collection that we've done yet. I want to give a huge thanks to my friend Rafe for all of the help with design work and just putting this whole capsule together. I'm wearing some of it, but let's start with the t-shirts. We have a pocket tee that we just put out. This here is a 2-color pocket tee. I know it's not black. I do too much in black and dark blue, but we have an ecru as color pocket tee. On the front, we have the Ludwig's Garage number 4 logo on the pocket, as well as a custom neck label printed inside, as well as a full back print, 2 colors on the back. Now I want to tell you guys a little bit about this design and the overall idea of the number 4. If you've been on the channel for a while, many of you guys know that my father raced when I was a kid. He circle track raced on dirt and on the ice. Since we're here in New Hampshire, the lakes freeze in the winter and they race cars on the ice. I know it's probably a foreign concept to a lot of you guys from the warmer climates, but here in the Northeast of America, it freezes in the winter and we actually race cars on the ice. My father and his friend Jim raced a 68 Chevelle for 13 years here in this area and dominated the classes that they raced in. And for one of those years, they raced this what used to be Gremlin, turned into an open-wheeled V8 modified, and that's what we've put on this shirt for this drop. Their Chevelle, this Gremlin, and my father's Mark I Volkswagen Rabbit that he raced for many years were all number 4. And that's why I've started to integrate this into Ludwig's Garage to kind of embody my family's heritage, my family's motorsport history, as it were. Now, the graphic on the back of this t-shirt is a vector from a real photo from the 1980s of a race when they had in this car. Moreover, this photo was actually used on a race bill they had before a championship race in 1989, I believe, late 80s. These are printed on premium as color t-shirts. They're high quality. They feel great. They don't shrink. Next up, we have our new crew neck sweatshirts, one of which I'm wearing right now. These are also printed and embroidered on as color pullover crew neck sweatshirts. And these have been in the pipeline for quite some time now. The front left breast is an embroidered Ludwig's Garage logo. The neck label on this one is a woven stitched on label that I personally hand punch the size out. And the whole idea behind this style neck label was to basically emulate a date code for like a battery, like a vintage automotive date code. So we have all of the sizes from small to triple XL on this woven label, and I punch out the corresponding size to the size of the garment. But also we have a woven label hem tag down here at the bottom on the right side. This is a cross stitch pattern, which is different than the neck label stitch pattern, which has our Ludwig's Garage logo inside of it. And on the back, we have a screen printed logo, Ludwig's Garage, Purpose and Passion, and again, Route 3 North, Meredith, New Hampshire. So stoked on these. And we finally have a new Ludwig's Garage hat. I know you guys have been on me for a long time about this. I've been procrastinating doing another Ludwig's Garage hat. This one, although it's white, it has a navy blue bill. And if you're like me, that's what I'm always handling when I'm in the shop. So I wanted to make sure we had a dark bill visor on this hat so you don't get the rest of the hat super dirty if you're in the shop. This is our new Patina Paradise snapback hat. This is also an as color snapback. We've got a 2-color embroidery on the front, and we have a little red script L embroidered on the back. And again, Lakes Region, New Hampshire on there. The LG obviously stands for Ludwig's Garage, and the CR9 is the original area code for Meredith, New Hampshire. And it basically just embodies where I'm from and where this whole thing started. We also have new stickers on the website. I always forget to do stickers. We have 2 slap stickers with the race car on them. We have 2 different style number 4 stickers, as well as an acrylic and leather combination keyring that I made right here in-house out of a white and black acrylic, laser cut, laser engraved, genuine leather strap. Now this release is extremely limited. We only did 50 sweatshirts, 50 t-shirts, and 50 of the hats, and they're live right now. So head to ludwigsgarage.com, the link is in the video's description below, and order yours while they last. I'm really trying to raise the bar of quality for you guys with all of the Ludwig's Garage merch. I don't want this to be typical YouTuber merch. I want you guys to order a shirt and love it for years to come. I want this to be the best shirt you guys have. All of your support and purchases go right back into this shop, into this channel, into the projects, and keep this whole thing alive. We have a great episode ahead. I get a lot done on the 1000 SP. We finally get a fuel cell and a relocation of our air tank. Lots of fab work. Hope you guys enjoy. All right, guys, so in today's episode, we have the doors open. That's first and foremost. We have the doors open in the shop today because it's going to be in the low to mid 70s here in New Hampshire for mid to end of April. Finally, we're getting spring. I feel like I've started the last few episodes talking about either it's snowed again, it's super cold, or it's finally warm. We are working on fuel cell placement in the front of the 1000 SP, and that involves framing in the front half of the tubular chassis I'm building inside the body. So we're not just building mounts for a fuel cell, we're building like frame structure, trying to figure out where firewalls and false floors are gonna go because we need a floor inside of our trunk. So we're kind of trying to do a bunch of things, and we got to design it too. So as you can see, I've been out here already not filming because I just had to put my head down and stare and think and measure and just deliberate on what I'm going to do here. So we're starting this episode with a little bit of an idea. So this is what we're currently looking at. For those of you guys who have been following along, this is body. This here is also body. And the body is still going to be removable from the Beetle pan, right? This here, that there, steering assembly, steering box, front beam, all that is Beetle pan, forward-most body mounts. So this whole thing needs to be able to come off if need be. It's not gonna come off like all the time. Once we're done, I hope this thing never has to come off again. I want everything to be serviceable and removable without taking the body off because we're gonna have seam sealer and weather stripping and all that stuff. So in this space is where I need to put a fuel cell, and there's not a lot of space. I really didn't want to put one right here because the front of the car is right here. We're gonna try to work this dent out and this dent here. I've kind of talked about it in previous episodes. In here did not give me a lot of space to have anything, even a 5-gallon tank. I'd have to make something custom. I don't have my TIG welder set up yet. I've only made a few TIG passes ever. Like, I'd love to build my own fuel cell, but I'm not at the skill set point yet where I would feel confident in doing that in a timely fashion. And I really want to just keep progress going on this car. So what we've done is I've figured out that right from behind this body mount and ahead of my firewall, I can fit something right here that's 8 gallons. And that's not as much as I really wanted, but it's going to be enough to where I can put 8 gallons in the tank and drive for a while. So the reason why I can only fit an 8-gallon here is I want to keep access to my brake and clutch reservoirs. And since they're so far forward for how the body and cockpit is set up, I can't gain access to them from inside the car. It's real tight here. And for where the steering column comes out to where my crossbar is, I just can't get enough access from inside to get to these easy, which means I have to get to them from under the hood from outside the car, right? So I got to figure out where I'm going to put a firewall. It's going to go over the Napoleon hat somehow. But all I know is I need a removable cover or floor here to gain access to the fluids in my reservoirs, which means I don't want to put a fuel cell here and not be able to get to those without taking the fuel cell out, you know, without draining the tank and unhooking fuel lines and all of that. And most importantly, height to the hood. This is an incredibly slim car. If you've been to a couple of the shows that I've brought this thing to already, you'll know, I mean, this is like knee height. The car is super slender. So I couldn't go with anything too tall. This hood scoop has saved us because this relief height in this hood scoop has given us the clearance we need. So this here is what I've picked up. Super simple, very basic, 8-gallon fuel cell. Now I looked everywhere that wasn't a custom application, and I've seen this exact tank or the same specifications on numerous places. I've seen it on Summit, on Jegs, even on Amazon. So you can get this thing basically anywhere. Now I'm only running this fuel cell because the hood will be able to close. I'll be able to gain access to my reservoirs for my brake and clutch, and it'll fit. So pretty basic. We've got our lower ports here. We've got some upper ports here for ventilation. We've got our fill cap here, and we have a sending unit, which is great. So I'll be able to run an electronic fuel gauge, which is awesome. Some of these really old cars, like my BMW 700 and the 1000 SP, they're both 1960, and they were mechanical fuel gauges. It's got 4 tabs on it for mounting, front and back. Okay, so I've got a few pieces of square stock cut since the majority, actually all of this front half and back half of this car I built with 1-inch square stock. We're gonna continue to use 1-inch square stock where we can. With the fuel cell here, I need to figure out where my floor is going to be that'll come up with the body, right? To separate road basically from car, right? Because we don't want dirt, sand, water, debris coming up into the trunk essentially. So we need to be able to create inner fender wells and a false floor or an actual floor to basically create that barrier from inside to outside. Since we can't use this as a floor because this here is lower than our passenger side tie rod when it's aired out. So I've got the car aired out now, so I know where everything is at its highest point for the suspension. And those are above this bar here. And so is my steering box. So we need to build a floor that can clear the highest point of our tie rod when aired out and our steering box at its static location. So I think this back here is high enough. This crossbar welded to the firewall of the 1000 SP, I think is high enough to clear all of that. And I've just kind of pulled some preliminary measurements. So what I've done now is I've cut some 1 7/8 long pieces of square that'll come down off of my like frame rails, for lack of a better term. And I'm going to put a cross member in, like so, across them. Okay. All right. All right, so this is what it's going to look like with the fuel cell in. And as I mentioned, it takes up a bunch of space. Height is at our limit. Obviously, we need to build mounts here and here up front and allow for clearance for my line out for my fuel line. So I'll probably put a 90 off of this. And most of you Beetle guys will know that right behind this magnet, right there in that hole, is where the original factory fuel line comes up out of the pan head. So if we put a 90 on this, we won't have much of a rubber line we'd need to connect to our hard line to go all the way back. If we end up using that trajectory with a hard line. But we do have overhead clearance. Luckily, where this is the highest, we've got a relief in the hood for the hood scoop, which is great. This crossbar will go across like that from those pieces that'll stretch down. And that'll be high enough for a floor above our steering box and above our rag joint, and be the same height as the feet of our fuel cell. And those fittings are lower than the feet of the fuel cell. So this is what I'm thinking here, because if I put this crossbar here, we can then have the remaining space ahead of it to be deeper, right? So you can put like a backpack here or something, since clearly if this is gonna be our floor and the hood shuts here, we're not gonna have a lot of overhead space for any sort of cargo. And that's assuming my air suspension management still goes behind the seats, which would leave us no cabin space for cargo of any kind, backpacks, suitcases, whatever. And you guys may remember, I've currently got the air suspension set up on a piece of MDF. So we've got the compressor, water trap, tank, manifold, all just temporarily mounted to this piece of MDF, so it's modular. Because I've taken the car to a few shows, and this allows me to put this in the back of the car behind the seats and put a battery in the car. And I've got a switch right here that when hooked up to power, I can turn the ignition on essentially to operate basically the suspension in the car on its own. So I don't know if I'm gonna split this up or not. You know, my thought process was putting all of this behind the seats right there. But if I wanna leave that for cargo space, I'm thinking of possibly putting the air tank right here, and it will fit. We've got 24 inches of space here. I kind of like the idea of having the management under the hood here so it can be out of sight when I want it to be and not in the way at all times. All right, so I kind of just put my head down and did some thinking, some measuring, a little bit of cutting, a little bit of tack welding. I'm about to tack weld these longitude mounted bars in. Now, although it might look utterly insane and too busy and overlapping and underlapping and whatever, this is ultimately not just going to be the fuel cell mounts, but it's going to be the top of my false floor. Since this cavity right here won't really be enough for a couple of backpacks, you could probably cram some backpacks here, but I'd have to put like some sort of like false wall here because air is going to come in through the grill right to this cavity here. And if I didn't block it off, if we grab a piece of cardboard here, it looks like we've nailed it with our height because it doesn't touch the steering box either. We've got a little bit of room. So ideally, when the floor is in, really all you'll see is the fuel cell naturally, and these support bars kind of disappearing down through the floor. So let's tack these things in. I'm not gonna finish weld anything yet because I don't know what's gonna work and what isn't. So now that we have these in, I marked where our mounts were for the feet of the fuel cell and squared them off to this bar here, and I'll just tack weld it. That way we can set the fuel cell down and start messing with the modifications on the mounting feet because we need to trim a little bit off the back ones to push it back just a little bit further. All right, so it's the day after Easter. Last clip was on Saturday. I went to church with my family and just kind of hung out yesterday for the day. Hope you all had a great weekend. But now we are back on this car. This is the week of dust off, so I've got a lot to do to prep for the show, get all my booth stuff out. Everything's pretty square. I put my level on these bars so they're comparable to these bars. Since they're not perfectly level when the car's aired out on the floor, which it is now. So I like this, I really do. I know this is a little busy in here, but once we get our floor in, I think it'll make more sense and look much better. But I think what I wanna do now is figure out what I wanna do here with the air tank. I really wanna put the air tank here, I think. So let's kind of make some templates and see what we can do in this space. All right, so what I'm gonna do next is we're gonna trim these back mounting tabs down a little bit. So the holes of the mounting feet can move back farther in the frame in the car. I think I'm gonna take a 1/4 inch off, which means we've gotta cut a little bit of the triangulation here and the flat. And that is so where the mounting hole is can move back further so we can put a riv nut actually in our crossbar here. Because right now, that hole, you can kind of see my mark when I scribed it. It's really close to the edge there, and we've got to drill a 7/16 hole to get our M8 riv nut in there, and that's just gonna be too close. So I wanna move that to the center of that 1 inch square. Same here, you can see how close that is to the edge. All right, so I went ahead and marked out where the mounting holes are going to be for the fuel cell and went ahead and drilled the front ones out. We haven't drilled out the back ones or even marked them yet, because what I wanted to do was get my riv nuts in and just make sure the front can be anchored. And so far the fronts are good. I test fit them after I drilled those holes. These are an M8 riv nut. So these will take an M8 bolt all around. We'll put a lock washer on top. It won't go anywhere. I want to mount at least the 2 front ones in on the fuel cell, and then we'll finish weld these up. That way, if these move at all, the fuel cell is in, right? So the fuel cell can be in, and these two will at least stay tight. Almost time for a large bolts and nuts bin. Gotta get on that. All right, M8. We'll just use 2 of them for right now. Well, we got the front mounted and in place, riv nuts pressed in. We've got enough allowance up underneath, and that does clear our long passenger side tie rod. All right, well, I finished welded up our parallel bars and our crossbar to our vertical ones as well. There's still a little bit of welding I need to do when the body comes off for the next time, because I'll be able to get in from underneath better once it's separated from the pan. You know, once this is up, I can get in and underneath, do some underneath welding. So far, super happy with this. Cleaned up a few of the welds just so I've got a nice flat surface to put sheet metal down on. I might have to clean up some of the gusset welds up front against the firewall, but really happy with this so far. I was kind of worried that this was going to get far too busy and just look like a network of tubes that just didn't make any sense, but I'm actually not too bothered with it. I kind of like it. All right, we got the fuel cell mounted and bolted in and snug. That thing is not going anywhere. Now what I'm doing is I'm kind of just mocking up the air tank here. This is the Flow Air Ride tank. This is the 24-inch tank. And you can also mount these feet and index them in just about any location around the tank itself. So as you can see here, I have it indexed so it sits straight up and down. So what we would ultimately do if I mounted this on the side is we would rotate those feet to up here so we could rotate it another 90 degrees to then have that drain pointing straight down, which is where we would need it to drain any water or condensation accumulation out of the tank. I really like the idea of putting it here. I mean, yeah, it's like it's up front. You know, if you get hit, you lose your air supply if you rupture the tank, but the goal is to never be in an accident. Now, here's where I want your guys' input on this. I think I know what I'm gonna do, but I kinda wanna hear from you guys. Do we hide this tank completely? Do we push this down enough to where when we put the floor down, when we sheet metal this all in, the floor goes over the top of the tank all the way in? Or do we mount it up here and do something like this, where the floor comes straight up to it and just the tippy top part of this tank is revealed? Right? So it's almost like Frenched, the floor is almost Frenched over the tank. But I think it'd be pretty cool display-wise if when you open the hood, you get this almost like peekaboo look of the tank just barely revealing itself through the floor. All right, guys, so I've been working on this frame setup here, and basically where my lateral bars that bent down to my bumper mounts, I kind of came off of those at the bottom, connected to a vertical piece that came down across our new cross member here, and cut another cross member that butts on the inside of our vertical bars here and over. And what I've just cut are 2 more vertical bars that will be, the actual pieces that the air tank feet will mount to. So we've got our upper hole for the upper feet in our crossbar here. And the next one down has yet to be measured, but that'll be down here on this because it's not spanning this bar to this bar. The feet aren't that wide. But I'm really happy with how this is coming together. Everything's only tacked in right now. I literally only have 1 to 2 tacks on each piece. So far, nothing's coming apart. The one thing I need to make sure of, which I kind of did when I started bracing all this stuff in, is to make sure that I can get the front beam off of the pan with the body on, right? If I ever need to take that front beam off, I don't want to have to pull the body off to do it. So I'm pretty sure I've got enough allowance here. The bolt should come out enough to where at least I can get the beam to come off the pan head. All right, so I think I have all my welding done for now until the body comes off the pan. As I've mentioned in the last few episodes on the 1000 SP, we have a ton of like tidy up or finish up welding to do once we separate the body from the pan again. And I'm kind of waiting to like get that checklist as long as possible, so when it comes off, we can get as much done as possible so we don't have to take it off like many more times. Well guys, we finally have a fuel cell in the 1000 SP. The search is over for something that would fit in this thing and allow the hood to shut. But we've also been able to relocate the air tank, which I'm super excited about because we can hopefully gain access to more cargo space in this car. Lord knows driving the BMW 700 anywhere out of town is difficult because you can hardly fit anything. So that's it for this episode, guys. I'm super excited with the progress we're making on this car. I might coat this down in a weldable primer or maybe even just spray paint for the weekend for the haul down to dust off. I think we've got some rain coming on the Saturday, but you guys are seeing this on the day of dust off. So once more, remember to go to ludwigsgarage.com. The link is in the video's description below to grab all the new merchandise that is out today. I'm hoping this sells out, but I'm super excited about everything we have on the store right now. I really appreciate all of you guys' support and for watching. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Subscribing to the channel helps in a huge way keep this whole thing afloat and keep things going. Thanks again for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next episode.